All right, so today we are talking about bringing the wowza for coding professionals. And this is one of the things that Jesse, when he asked me to do career coaching for Careers in Code, was asking for is how do we encourage and tell our students how they can continue to stand out and bring the wowza to their interview experience or their job search experience. And Max is very adamant too that these are things that they're looking for when they hire candidates. So we're going to cover starting with values-based branding because standing out starts with you. So we're going to start talking about what your reputation, your character, how that ties to what your values are. Then we will talk about all the different opportunities and ways that you can bring the wowza. And basically, it's everything we've talked about. Every piece of your job search can have an element where you stand out in it, especially when you dig into what your values are and who you are. Then we'll talk about portfolios a little and what should be included in those. I'll also share with you a couple of examples. Then we're going to talk about telling your story. This is something that most people have a hard time doing, but it's very important and it can be very powerful for you to be able to actually cohesively talk about yourself. Even myself, sometimes I have such an all over the place background. I find when I introduce myself or I meet with someone who says, tell me about you, I end up thinking like, you are all over the place. Like, practice getting it into something that makes sense and doesn't get you lost, because I get lost in my own story sometimes. And then we should have time for questions. So first we're going to talk about, like I said, values-based branding. So people normally talk about personal branding, but they don't talk all the way back to this. Your branding should have everything to do with who you are, where you came from, and what your experience has been. So deep down, our values and how we behave all come from our beliefs, the examples we had growing up, our experiences, and those shape what our values are. And it's chicken and the egg kind of thing, whether your values or your why comes first, but your values are the things that are important to you, and your why is the thing that motivates you. So I like to think of your why actually is the thing that helps you keep going and stay motivated and driven to do what you're doing, but your values help shape exactly what it is that you're doing. Those things all shape your attitude, and then your attitude shapes your behavior. Good attitude promotes one type of behavior, and a bad attitude promotes a different type of behavior. So all of that has to do with how you show up in the world. So your brand, I mean, we call it branding now, but it's just character and reputation. What are you known for? Next slide, please. Hello. Okay, so how do we build a brand? Obviously, there's lots of your brand that's already embedded in you. So we're going to talk about who you are. And then we're going to talk about who you are on the outside, how other people may perceive you. And we're going to consider how there may be a difference or a gap between who I think I am and how I think people see me or how I want to be seen. So I think most of you enjoyed before when we actually had like an activity during this. So that's what we're going to do now. So if you could just start by taking a couple minutes to write down, what are your values? What are those things that are the most important to you? And write down at least 3 of them, more of them if you can think of them. And I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. These things will all tie in later to the build your story part. Everybody able to come up with at least 3 things? Anybody want to share what they came up with?
I can share.
Great.
Okay, I came up with about 5. I came up with independence, social justice, creativity, perseverance, and self-sufficiency.
Excellent. I love it. I love those. Got some chat. Good question, Ariel, asking if this is the same as branding you would do for a company. It's very similar. So a company, when they develop their brand, they should be developing a persona. They should also be considering when you come up with a color for your brand, for your company, that color should represent values that you actually have. So it's almost like creating a personal brand for a company. But the thing that's different is that for you personally, it is about you, and it's not about creating an alternative persona. It's about your actual persona. So for your business, it's important for your branding to reflect what you think would align with your customer base. But for you, it has everything to do with actually who you are. So I like the ones that you've written here, professional and light. So you'll notice that those types of values can be for an individual person or for a business, but they just sort of play out a little bit differently. But you'll use them in the exact same way in having your brand show up in the way that you stand out, in the way that you tell your story. And then once you're kind of self-aware of them, you'll start to build an even stronger brand. Like for myself, I want to have, sorry, cat needs the door open. I have to have a brand and reputation as a crazy cat lady because apparently that's my life. But I am though. My values are environment and animals and human and animal rights, human rights. So having my cat here actually alongside me is actually part of my values. If I wanted to be professional and not have this like approachable persona, then there would be no funny cat showing up ever in my videos because I'd be trying to put out a different type of brand. I also tend to dress very casual because to my brand has more to do with, I think that smarts and brains has everything to do with who you are, not what you wear. So I do not try to overdress or impress people in that kind of a way. And so that only makes my story, when I show up the way I want people to see me, and I show up in a way that people expect to see me. So the more you can hone into this and really reflect on the way that your values show up and are perceived by other people, the stronger you can build that for yourself. Just reading Carolyn's chat. Yeah, and they're all so resilience, relationships. When you start to hear these things from people, you can often say, "Oh yeah, I know." Like you almost could do where we put out like a list of values and then tried to match them to each of you. You've been together so long now, you probably could tell a little bit of who belongs to who. But occasionally you'll run into somebody where the persona they're projecting, their brand, does not match who you know them to be. And that's where trust is completely gone. Those are those people that they give you that bad feeling, or you just don't trust them further than you can throw them. So the next thing I wanted you to do though is to look at the things that you wrote down and prioritize them. Which are the top 1 or 2 that you would never compromise, that are the things that are the most important to you? Because we all say honesty, we all say integrity, but at the end of the day, what are those things that matter to you most, that you would go down swinging for? Like accountability. And once you put these things out there, once you say accountability is a top value for me, then you start to see how maybe some of your behaviors aren't very accountable. It helps you also be real honest with yourself. And like I said, once you start being known for being an accountable person, that makes you, when somebody's looking for someone accountable, they think of you, you know? Oh, I love self-sufficiency, Stacy. That one's important to me too, especially working with young people. A lot of times they ask for things. You're like, oh my God, go look it up. I thought you all grew up with Google. Okay, now move into the why. Why do you do what you do? And how, just kind of think about how that which came first, maybe your values or your why. Like, why are you here 2/3 of the way through boot camp and getting ready to do mock interviews and get a job that's probably hopefully going to change your life for the better? Why do you do this? What makes you get through it? And for me, sometimes I tell Toby it's just so I can put cat food in his bowl. A strong belief in what you're doing. That's good, Carolyn. What is it that you're doing? There you go. So you have a strong belief in helping others. That's what I want you guys to get to is, what is the purpose? What are you doing? Okay, so this next part of the personal branding and the values-based branding is then knowing those values you just listed in your why. What is your brand? How would you describe what your brand is? And it might be similar words, but for me, my brand is approachable. My brand is casual. My brand is freedom. I think it's important. These are traits that I try to emulate and role model and carry with me as the way that I want to be seen. Thinking outside the box, I like that. So if you're thinking outside the box, you're probably that person that everyone says, "Oh my gosh, Stacy has such great ideas. She's always coming up with creative solutions to things." It's a great description for your brand. Anybody else want to share? Sincere and trustworthy. That's good. All right, so the last one is, now, is there any disconnect? So how do you think others see you? What do you think people say about you? If you're not sure, then you could make a note to maybe ask some friends, ask some past coworkers. If there's anybody, ask somebody here in Careers and Code, someone you can trust to give you some genuine feedback. There's also this thing called Johari. Let's spell it here. There's a Johari test that you can take, and essentially it will ask you questions about your brand, how you see yourself, and then you can send it to other people, who your sister, your mom, someone, a friend, and they can fill it out and they pick the different words and adjectives that they use to describe you. And so you could get that feedback that says, "Oh, I think I have this reputation for being extremely accountable, and they think that I'm totally forgetful." But that is one kind of fun thing that you can do. So this exercise is all just about creating awareness, self-awareness around that values-based branding. So as you move forward, as you create the wowza into your job search strategy, you're considering and thinking the way, like how you might want to bring the wowza. What type of creativity, what type of project or endeavor might want to include. Yes, What Color is Your Parachute is a good book that talks about a lot of this in your strategy as well. So moving on to, actually, are there any questions about that exercise before I move on? Okay, so now we'll talk about all the different opportunities for bringing the wowza. And what I'm showing you here is just a list of things that you should be doing. That's not necessarily bringing any type of wowza. actually having a business card. If it's a poorly made business card, it might actually do the opposite. So when I say a business card, you want to think about my values, my brand. How do I take a business card and turn it into wowza? So a friend of mine is an artist. He just told me a few days ago, I'm about to make new business cards. And I said, why would you make business cards? Because he was kind of saying he didn't want to do it. So I said, why don't you make postcards? He's doing this artist series on Mondays, and every Monday he comes up with this wonderful digital piece of art. And I was like, why don't you make postcards out of those? You've been doing this for a couple of weeks, and then you can give people postcards instead of business cards, and they have an actual piece of art of yours that they could mail around. And so you get exposure. It's more fun. They're totally going to remember that more than a business card. And he made them in like 2 days, and they're gorgeous. So what I'm showing you again is just the basics. It's up to you to figure out what your personal brand is and how to bring the wowza to it. So your personal website, same thing. You can have a plain website, you can have just the basics, or you can make your website really pop with your values, colors that represent your values. Think about how, when we talk about stories in a minute, how your website is portraying your story on there. Look at other people's websites and pick and choose what you don't want to be like. This is boring. I don't like the way this is. But then look at other ones that have examples like, wow, I like that. And just, you're not going to copy, but you might want to steal elements of something that someone else is doing that you think is cool. A lot of times we can't get these ideas until we do some research. So look at some other coding websites. There are tons of examples. If you just Google full stack developer personal website example or portfolio examples, you'll see lots of them. So same thing with your portfolio. I'm going to show you a couple now, but you can do plenty of research on your own. Resumes, there's the one piece where I don't recommend you go too crazy. You want to stand out in your resume, you want to have a great, complete resume that tells your story. You don't necessarily want it to go crazy outside the box with styling or anything like that. So just keep that in mind. Cover letter, same thing. You want a standard business format, but you're going to stand out by telling your story in it and by being able to really articulate why you're the best person for that job. You can, though, Google different ways to be creative. There are some examples of people who have written the entry paragraph in a certain way or told a certain part of their story a certain way, just something to grab attention in the cover letter that, you know, they kind of have to put themselves out there. There's a vulnerability piece because there's the, what if they don't like this? And I think Max has an example if you want to ask him again. I remember him talking in class about somebody who had written a cover letter that they really liked. So there are opportunities to craft your cover letter in a way that helps you stand out, but you have to be careful with it. And then also your elevator pitch. And this isn't meaning having a crazy wild elevator pitch either. It means having one. It means practicing one. It doesn't have to be memorized. But like I said, if you're like me and you get asked about your history or what are you doing here, and then you start rambling, that doesn't help you. So you could stand out from other people just by having practice telling your story. So during the interview process, so pre-interview, while you're trying to get an interview, make sure that you're showing enthusiasm and gratitude for the opportunity. This is another way to stand out. Seems really simple, but it's a way to stand out because a lot of people don't do it. They get nervous and they are straight-faced. I have RBS, if any of you know what that is, which just means I look very German when I'm not smiling. And so I have to make myself smile. Otherwise, it looks like I'm frowning. So make sure, you know, practice in front of the mirror. When you talk, you look smiley. I did this one time for it was like a 30-second business video segment, and they kept saying, you need to smile more. And I'm like, I'm smiling as much as I can. And I couldn't. And then I'd watch it back and I was like, man, it doesn't look like I'm smiling at all. So something you might need to practice, especially on camera. The reason we're practicing mock interviews is so you can confidently talk about your strengths. You all have strengths. You've all made it this far in the program. Every single one of you is awesome. But I can talk about that. You're the ones that have a hard time talking about it. If I was on the flip side, I'd be in the same position. So, but that is a way you can stand out because many people aren't able to do that either. The other thing is to be honest about your limitations. A lot of people have the tendency to try to answer a question they don't know how to answer. So make sure that when you are asked a question that you're not sure about, that you are either saying, I don't know, or you're saying, I haven't answered that before, but I think if I understand what you're saying, this is what I would do. But not trying to pretend like you know everything they're talking about. If they mention a software you've never heard of before, you can ask them, I'm not familiar with that. Is it like this? Or I'm not familiar with that. Can you explain what it does? Or blah, blah, blah. Again, having that positive attitude, a lot of people just don't show a lot of smiling when they're nervous, and they may come in and you may get that, if your interviewers aren't reflecting it onto you, you might not reflect it back. So make sure that if your interviewers for some reason aren't being extra, maybe they're just RBS people too. Maybe they're not smiling at you. Make sure that you're not reflecting that back. That you have a positive attitude, not throwing anything negative. If you had bad experiences your other workplaces, you don't want to talk about them there. After the interview, sending thank you notes. We talked about this before in the interview module. The employers all said that the people that they are hiring are the ones who follow up and send thank you notes. Again, those thank you notes could just be thank you notes, or they could be handwritten. They could be, I wouldn't go too extravagant. It might be over the top to send a gift or something, but a handwritten card or something. Again, go back to your values, something that says, here's me. I'd have personalized digital cards that have my brand on it. So when I send a thank you note digitally, it has an attached image with thank you on it. So it's not a Hallmark card, it's a card I made like in Canva. So you could send a personalized digital note, even if it's not handwritten. And so that is another way to, and then also standing out. One of the business survey feedback said that she said it wasn't a shoe-in, but if a person sent a thank you note that talked about how great the interview experience was, what they learned during the interview, how much they were taught, so not just thank you for the opportunity, like put some heart and soul into it and some real genuine gratitude and thought, then you're standing out. And it seems so small, but that one little small thing can really be that thing that sets them over the edge. They're looking for excuses to pick you. And so if you give them those chances, you'll be doing yourself a favor. Keep networking. So you had the interview, make sure that you're getting the job, or you're not getting the job, or you're getting another interview, or you're not. Make sure that you keep working your networking. A lot of people will apply for, and even networking with, in that space if you still want to work for that company, and continue to learn. So every time you go to an interview, you should be taking some notes, reflecting on what questions were answered well, which questions you couldn't answer, which ones you felt like you could have done better, and so that you're not getting to the next interview and repeating those mistakes. And that's all stuff that will help you to stand out and to get you the opportunities. Any questions about those things or any ideas sparked about standing out?
This might be tiny, but this is Latonia. I actually had an interview this morning with someone.
Nice.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a half an hour, went 15 minutes. So I guess she likes me. She said she's moving me to the next stage.
Great.
But what I ended up doing was I always keep paper for notes and stuff anyway, but just as she was talking, I just wrote down like a high level overview of the point that she said. And then when I responded, I literally just went through the list that she had rattled off, and just talked about whether or not I felt like I met it, just like you just said, or if it was something that I would need to maybe work on, and what have you. But I think being able just to look at my notes real quick and just basically just go back over what she had said had helped me in that way. So just wanted to share it. Something little
Awesome.
that we can do, but.
Yeah, that's great. And then you followed up with her afterwards?
No.
I know you did. No?
No, I did not.
Latonia.
It's too soon. I have to send her my resume and cover letter. So I made a note to send her a thank you note and gratitude, and I'll do it, but I ain't
Yeah.
did it yet.
It's never too soon to send the thank you note. So my recommendation, because I think it's always impressive to me when I get an immediate thank you. So even if you just say, thank you so much, that was great, I'll send you this tomorrow. Like, then they go, oh my gosh, she's so on top of this, and she's going to send it to me tomorrow. And then you do send it tomorrow. So don't say you're going to send it tomorrow and not send it tomorrow. That would not be doing yourself any favors. But yeah, I think if you can just send a, that was great, I appreciate it, I'm going to send this to you, I'm working on it, like that really just, it's kind of impressive because again, no one else is doing it. So the thing everyone else is doing is going, well, I'll get it when I get it and whatever. But you want to
Well,
go
what
above.
if she expressed being like, busy? Because she said, I said, well, I didn't send it because I had asked the person that made the connection if they had a preference of how I sent my resume and cover letter. And so that's why she didn't have it in advance. But then she said, well, it's Friday and I have all this stuff going on. And, if you can just send something on Monday. So
Okay.
would I be pushing too much if I mean, it's been hours
I
now.
don't think
Maybe
a
that,
thank you is because you're not asking for anything, you're just saying thank you.
okay.
But if you felt like, yeah, that there's always and it depends.
Okay.
So yeah, if you get that out early on Monday, I'm sure that's fine too. But
Okay.
in most cases, you usually have the opportunity to send something pretty quickly. And
Okay. So would it be awkward if I sent it after class after we finish this? Like, is
yeah, I'd probably wait for now.
okay, thanks.
But that's great. Congrats. Okay, so let's talk about portfolios and websites quickly. So your website should include obviously a homepage, an about you page. It should have your picture on it. It should have your story on there. It should talk about what we're going to talk about next in your story. You should have, this is a general recommendation somewhere on your page, is to talk about what your skills are, get those keywords in there, and then a project portfolio, and obviously your contact information. Don't forget to put that. Go back, make sure you're incorporating your values-based branding things that we talked about. Show off your user design skills that you now have. And then we talked about this before, creating those custom landing pages. So Latonia, that's one of the things that you could do is build something for them that shows it's for them. And maybe that's where your thank you is incorporated. And as long as it doesn't hold you up from sending it. I mean, even your thank you, in the future, your thank you videos could be a video. Thanks, I appreciate it. Just something that stands out. And yeah, you can incorporate video on your website. You can incorporate into your conversation strategy as well in your emails. Then for your portfolio, you want to include obviously your best work that shows your range of skills, work that shows your passion, stuff that you're interested in. Definitely want to show any creativity that you can. What you don't want to include are projects that are underneath you. I don't think that means, so if you're doing volunteer projects that don't involve every skill that you have, that's okay. Maybe it shows the passion instead. If you did projects for a community organization that you're involved with or something. Again, if you want to show your best work in the portfolio, you can have other things in your GitHub, other things in other places, but your portfolio that you're showing your examples of work on your website should be the things that show your best. And so let me stop sharing and look at these examples. Oops. And I'll put the link in here for you. So you'll see in some of these examples, whether people are playful, whether people are serious, sarcastic, they should be reflecting the kind of person that they are. Confidence is coming out in this person. But this link you can go back and look at. This one tells a little bit of their story, has links to their work, contact you. It's a great idea to have your contact info front and center. Again, a little bit of that sarcasm. Then this one is completely sort of different format. This guy's got who I am right here, talks about his values, wants to make a difference. So this one, very creative. So think about your values, how you would like that to be reflected in your website and your portfolio, and how you would tailor it to that. But a lot of them have their contact info front and center, or a link to their portfolio and just a little bit about them. So I think these are great examples. I know all of you are capable of doing this.
Hey, Laura.
Yep.
Do you happen to have any examples of the landing pages, like the quick thing you can put together? Jesse at one point shared what he had done. Like he would always do something special for the different, but I don't know where to find that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have anything off the top of my head, but I will find it.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, almost done with today's presentation. Actually, we have to do stories first, which is also fun. Okay, now telling your story, what we want to include, your values, which you've already been reflecting on, same as your why, and your experiences, your strengths, where have you been, what have you overcome. That's a great part to tell in your story. Where are you going? So what I want you to do is some more practice. So we're going to talk about making a 3-minute version of your story, a 1-minute version, a 30-second story, and then dialing it into a tagline. So let's start with the 30-minute version. I'm going to give you several minutes to practice writing out, and I'll put this back up here, incorporating these things into your story. Now, this is sort of towards your elevator pitch. If I met you at a networking event and I said, "Hey, Kyle, nice to meet you. What is your background?" Open floor. What do you do? Now's your chance to tell your story. So, or if you're in this mock interview and now it's time to say, "Hey, Stacy, great to meet you. We're looking forward to learning more about you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?" And that would be the entryway into this telling your story for the 3-minute version. So I'll give you 5 minutes. You might not finish it. Maybe you can just work on an outline, and then we'll consider how we might shorten it. Okay, how's it going? Anybody need some help or have questions? So I was doing the exercise along with you because, like I said, I still am not great at this. And a couple observations. One, that every time I tell my own story, it kind of changes. I don't know if that depends on how I've thinking or recent events or what my emotions are, but sometimes there are different experiences from my past that will come up than others. Sometimes something will be more important in my story than I consider at a different time. But a lot of times also as I'm writing, it kind of builds itself. And if I'm looking at this list, sometimes I think, oh, that's my strength. That's something I should talk about a little bit more. And then ending it with where are you going? It doesn't matter where you've been. If you end it with where you're going, that's a positive, confident way to end your story, right? And of course, we're not ending our stories. We're just putting a coda in where we're at now. So now I'd like you to take that longer story and condense it into something that would be a third of the size. What's in there that's not really that important or maybe not that impactful? What stands out as your biggest strengths? What are maybe some sentences you could just scratch out of there or just rewrite it in a shorter version? Give me a few minutes to do that. Okay, how's that going? Just realized we're getting close to 7. Anybody want to share how that experience went for them? Or how you went about cutting your story down? So for me, I ended up basically cutting off the entire first paragraph and starting with what would be, I think, my tagline. And then I had said in 2015, this had happened and this happened, and then I had to quit my job. So I just said in 2015, I had to quit my job. Who cares what the other circumstances were in my shorter version? So there's different ways you can cut stuff down, but sometimes it's just extraneous information. Let me get to the point. And then I kept all the stuff about moving forward. So after this, you can practice. I don't need to put you through it now, but take your story, keep working on this, keep fleshing out. You want to start with the longer version so you can get everything in there. You might even start longer. I know other people have suggested that I've read that you could write everything you can think of. Darren Hardy talks about writing every single thing, every experience, everything from your past you can think of that have happened to you, things that have shaped where you are, and then start picking and pulling the pieces for your story out of that and keep condensing it down. But bring it into these shorter bits will help you get it into things you can use tagline for your website. So if you look at my LinkedIn page on the banner, it says Leap Taker right on there. So my story has condensed into Leap Taker and it's right there, all built into my brand. So it's a really cool exercise if you can put yourself to it and make yourself do it. So I highly suggest doing it. And that is the end of our Standing Out Module 6. We only have 2 more to go. Any questions from today's material?